Hey, welcome to the rebrand relaunch of my podcast. I'm Luke Gajari, and this was formerly known as the Get Better podcast. It was kind of a catch-all for ideas, leadership ramblings, thoughts, creative ideas, content. It was a landing pad. It was a catch-all for all my ideas. And I'm pivoting. Still going to be the same kind of format, 10 to 12 minute long episodes you could listen to on a quick lunch break or in a short drive. Primarily content nuggets from myself, but I'm going to angle it a little bit differently. I'm going to have a little bit more of a dialed in focus. As much of the things that I talk about and much of the pieces of content that I am now drilling down into have relation to digital church marketing. So online church creative stuff, dealing with teams, dealing with new content, dealing with new principles, new social media platforms, algorithm changes, advertising best practices, all that stuff. So I'm taking the wealth of knowledge that I have from the ministry world, wealth of knowledge that I have from the digital marketing and creative world, and fusing those two things together. And this is just another step. This is not necessarily a new direction. It's just kind of a step towards a focused effort to say all the content that I'm talking about, a lot of the things that I'm doing, we're doing some free download resources, we're doing some training portals where you can train members of your church and creative teams. So this is just another rung in the ladder of things that I'm building in that space. So if you're here and you like listening to what I have to say, you're maybe not necessarily a church creative, I think you're still going to get something out of this. And if you lead a church or lead teams or work in a church or volunteer at a church, this podcast is going to help you in the digital marketing efforts for your church. So stay tuned for new content, new episodes. Plan right now is to drop weekly. We'll also be doing some unique stuff on our YouTube channel, and as well as some review content, like looking at church content. There's so much negativity in the Christian content space right now. We review theology, we review sermons, we pick them apart. I've been guilty of it. I've contributed to the negative side of the conversation. I want to flip the script a little bit and look at the positives. What are churches doing well? What are some churches winning at? What are some things that churches are crushing it online in their context? And how can we zoom in on those churches that are making things work? I mean, we're going to skip over some of the more famously talked about mega churches and things that we know that are crushing it, and maybe scrape a little bit below the surface and look at churches that you may not be super familiar with, but that, in my opinion, are doing some really cool, unique stuff and some really just capitalizing on the land that God has given them and expanding territory in that space. So I hope you'll tune in. You'll subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's just Luke Gajari on YouTube. The podcast is the Digital Church Toolbox podcast. Maybe some convoluted branding as we move forward due to the fact that I'm basically just refilling an old podcast platform. So you'll see everything kind of slowly shift over and take kind of a new shape as we go into 2024 and beyond. Thanks for listening. Thanks for liking, subscribing, and I'm looking forward to bringing you the first episode of the new podcast.